Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 26 of the Rocket IT Business Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hyatt, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Stephen Tomlinson and Dave Hollister, co-owners of Level 7 Facility Services. These guys have been on the front lines of the pandemic as organizations everywhere have scrambled to adapt to rapidly changing guidelines and safety measures for commercial and industrial workspaces. Today, we'll learn how Dave and Stephen have built their business to embrace challenges and opportunities as they appear. So let's get started. All right, guys. Well, let's just get started. So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get started? How did you meet? Stephen, why don't you start us off?
Okay. Well, we met originally in Fantasy Football League.
Nice.
Yeah. Probably, 15 years ago.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. Yep. And then we were just kind of friends, from a distance. We didn't see each other that often for a long time. And I guess we'd see each other at the Fantasy Football League draft every year and be like, "Hey, Dave, how's it going?" And that would be about it. Like, we just really didn't know each other that well. And then Dave was in the landscaping industry for a number of years, and I can let him dive into that. But
wow. Dave likes hard work. I can tell already.
I do. I don't know why I like it, honestly. I like relying on labor.
Okay, we're going to get into that.
All right.
And so I'd gotten into the cleaning business, probably 12, 13 years ago in Savannah.
Okay.
And so I had a business down there and moved up here to get married in 2012 and sold the Savannah operation and started over this with the same business model from scratch. So
wow, nice.
And that was when Level 7 was started. And so Dave reached out to me in 2015, I think, 16, early 16.
Yeah.
And he was at a career crossroads and was interested in looking around, and I could probably let him tell it from his side of the story, but I'd always been impressed with him and was anxious to sit down.
He was really good at fantasy football.
Yeah, he is really good at fantasy football. That's a whole different story. But yeah, no, he's embarrassingly. He's actually been recently kicked out of my league because he's too good.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a great story there. But it's mob rule. They're like, this guy can't play. I'm sorry. So when he expressed interest in talking to us about finding a role with us, I was like, yeah, no, Dave's a great guy. Let's sit down and hear what he's got to say. And so we met for lunch at Baldino's on Buford Highway.
Nice.
And then by the end of that conversation, I was like, this guy gets it. He totally sees, the same sort of business philosophy that we have, and we need to find a role for him somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, was that role clear from the outset? Okay, Dave, you're in a groove. This is where you're gonna, what's hat you're gonna wear, and this is what I'm gonna do, or was it less clear than that?
Well, so when I was looking, I was in the landscape industry for about 25 years.
Wow.
And I mean, that goes back to me being 16 years old, pushing a lawnmower, and I was working with my buddy from high school. And, when I was looking at opportunities, I was looking at, for whatever reason, wanting to get into sales, which I now realize is a big mistake. But
I wouldn't say that. You're good.
I am not a sales guy.
Huh.
But, with the company, we started with a very small company, and we were able to build it up to about, $2 million. And so at the time where I was meeting with Stephen, our Level 7 was a small company. And I was like, you know what? I've already been through it. I've been through a lot of the, and even though I wasn't an owner of the company, my friend / boss treated me like I was. I was involved in all of the, the P&Ls, all the consultants, all of the, and I really, really learned a lot. And I felt like I had a lot to offer, and just sitting down with Stephen, like I had some opportunities to try like some sales jobs, and thankfully I didn't take them, And, Stephen's like, let's get you in here. Let's give it a shot, and one of the things that was a requirement from my side is I wanted at some point to be able to buy into the business.
Sure. Right.
So he's like, well, let's give it a trial period. Let's see how it works. And within 3 months, we were working out a deal for me to buy into the company.
Really?
So,
wow. I mean, that's a pretty darn short amount of time. Okay.
So, we clicked. Stephen and I saw, eye to eye. I mean, he's the yin to my yang. I mean, for real.
Nice.
I'm always very conservative about jumping in, and Steve's like, just jump in.
Right.
We'll figure it out.
Right.
We work very well together in that matter.
Well, it's good both ways, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's you often hear opposites attract in all kinds of relationships, marriage and business and all kinds of stuff. But to have somebody that's kind of that visionary, forward thinker, go for it, conquer the mountain kind of person with the person that says, well, why don't bring some safety equipment? Let's have a plan.
Exactly.
Let's just make sure we can get back down, right?
That's a great analogy.
That's a great pair. So, wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Man, it takes some guts. I know, it takes some guts. If you've spent some time building a business to bring someone else in, I guess it helped a lot that you guys had a friendship that was existing. You knew each other. But to bring somebody in after 3 short months and say, okay, come on into the fold, we're going to be co-owners.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that, I needed somebody like Dave on board. And I think, we had some pieces that were well placed, and think, we had something to build on. We had built a good foundation, but I think I was looking for somebody with the same kind of business mindset and, systems mentality. Let's build something scalable that really works, and with all the right values too.
Right.
I think that's what it boils down to for us is our culture and our values. We try to build everything that we do around those two things. And
that's awesome.
And so it was, as soon as Dave came on board, I mean, certainly we complemented each other well, and I realized this guy's got strengths where I've got weaknesses, and he would say vice versa. And so, but more importantly, it was like we both kind of saw the grand vision, and so it didn't feel like a leap of faith to me. It's like, this is the guy,
right?
And it's been a terrific partnership.
So I think I can kind of guess, just based on what you said, Dave, about how one falls into the landscaping business, the outdoor services kind of business. You start at 16 years old, and that's where you are. And somebody sees something in you, and you move up through the ranks. I get that. Mm-hmm. Less clear to me how I understand you've got an English degree.
Mm-hmm.
How do you land in the cleaning business? What was the draw and the attraction for you guys to get into that specific business?
Well, the first thing you do is you get an English degree.
Right. Super important. I know that's 101 right there. You got to get that done.
Well, I always thought that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I knew that.
Right.
And so I think I've always kind of kept in the back of my mind, what are business models that are healthy and well, let me back up a little bit. I came from home building, like flipping houses and doing some remodeling work, and so
right.
recession hit me pretty hard, and so I had a 1-year-old at the time, and luckily I was able to kind of keep my head above water, but I didn't see a stable future there, and so I was kind of looking around for something else, and I had a friend who was in this line of work and did contract commercial cleaning services, and it looked like a really good business model, and it looked like a recession-proof business model.
Right.
Because, even in the worst of times, you still have to have somebody do a minimum amount of maintenance. And
sure.
The trash has to be taken out one way or the other. So that was probably the biggest attraction, and that it is a scalable business if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And so... that's kind of, I started talking to my friend who was in the business, and we kicked around some possibilities of going into business together. And we never did put that together, but we're still friends. We're a friendly competition here. He's based in Atlanta too. And at the time I was in Savannah. So
okay.
But he was a big help to me back in the day, and
always great to have mentors, right?
Yeah.
So show the path.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you find, Dave, that there are similarities between the two different industries?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was an easy transition. I have an operational mind, I think, in terms of man hours,
right.
And whether that's man hours pushing a lawnmower or it's man hours pushing a vacuum.
It's your inventory, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in fact, it's a lot cheaper. I always looked at, I was like, I can't believe our cleaner is allowed to charge us this much. He's in my house for 5 hours and charging me $200. I was like, goodness gracious! In landscaping, I'm getting $100 for that. For cleaning, I'm getting 50. But in general, it's really service. We're providing a service.
Sure.
And how do you best provide that the most efficient way? And I knew that inside and out in the landscaping, and I knew that it would transition pretty easily in the cleaning industry.
Nice.
And so it was an easy, nice transition. I had to learn about carpet stain extraction out of carpets.
Right.
But you learn that.
You had
pretty
to learn
quickly.
the technical parts of the roles. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I think once you develop a skill set for leading people and you understand the mindset of providing a service, that is translatable.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, you guys could run an IT company, I bet, right? That'd be pretty awesome. Good. Well, that's really cool. I love your story and kind of how you got started. So it sounds like 2016, we're 2021, so it's been about 5 years. What is your shared vision for the company? Where are you going?
Well,
Dave looks over at Stephen. Nice.
Well, we want to keep growing for sure,
Yeah.
and we are putting the pieces in place to keep growing. And it's, it comes in spurts, of course, and sometimes it comes with a great deal of pain.
Sure.
It feels like we're going through some serious growing pains right now.
Right.
What we're trying to put together and tighten up all of our SOPs, and sort of keeping the culture of what we do at the center of everything and our values. And we meet regularly at senior management, and we talk about our vision, the direction that we're headed, and we always try to make sure that is what we're doing, does it align with our core values.
Right.
But in answer to your question, there is a great need for what we do, and if you can show up and do it really well and be consistent, then there's a lot of market share to be gained. So ideally, I think what we'd like to do is get our systems down to the point where things are such a science that you could take what we do and put it in another city, and it works well there too. So
Absolutely.
We're not quite there, but we do work on those SOPs all the time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So just out of curiosity, SOPs, standard operating procedures, how do you guys do that? Is it literally like, I worked in retail way back when, and we literally had an SOP book, and there was a manual, and you pull it out, and if you need to know how to open the store, close out the cash register, there's a written document there. Is it like that, or is it?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a whiteboard. You stand
You
up.
start there.
You have 2 or 3 people in here to actually do the process and
Nice.
say, okay, this is the first thing we do. This is the second thing we do. And then somebody else say, whoa, wait, you're forgetting that. And then we'll go ahead and we'll revise them because they'll change because we're evolving. As we get bigger, the way we start up an account, now versus the way we did it 5 years ago is completely changed.
Right.
And so it's a matter of keeping that updated and being able to, and repeatable.
Right.
And I mean, obviously that's the key. As long as you can get a standard operating procedure that I can hand to somebody in Charleston, South Carolina, say, this is how we do it. You have to look at the book of how we do everything. Here it is. They can do it. I mean, that's our goal.
Love it. Now, Stephen, you and I met because you're out there in the community and representing your company and doing that terrifically, by the way. Dave, you said sales is not my thing, not my favorite thing. So can I assume that you're the operation sort of behind the scenes guy? Is the SOP kind of in your wheelhouse, or is it shared? How do you do that?
So we kind of share the SOPs, but the way we kind of break it out is Stephen said from the get-go, I'm going to get the business and you figure out how to make it happen.
Nice. So promise maker, promise keeper.
You got it.
All right, gotcha.
You got it.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we work well. We don't fight too much.
Okay, that's good.
No, I mean, I've also got Skalk. He's our director of operations below me, and he is a former lawyer.
Oh, wow.
So you talk about writing good SOPs. He's a stud.
I got to see your prerequisites list. English degree, former lawyer. Okay.
I'm economics.
Yeah. Right. That works pretty well.
Yeah. So, we do share the SOP, and he deals much more on the sales side, sales and marketing, and I'm more on the operational side.
I see. Mm-hmm. Something you mentioned about setbacks. I've been doing what I do for a very long time. We're in our 27th year at this point.
That's awesome.
Just this week, had a conversation with my leadership team that we've had before, but just have to remind them, because we set our goals high. Mm-hmm. And I know from my own experience that we don't always hit our goals, but I also know that it's important to set those goals high, because when you're reaching for it, even if you fall a little bit short, you're probably still doing pretty darn good.
That's right.
Right? But the discussion we were having was, every entrepreneur, every leader, when we're setting those goals, ideally you start, down in the bottom left, and we want to go to the top right, and the ideal way to get there is just straight up, right? Mm-hmm. A straight line, the shortest distance between 2 points. But then when you look back and say, well, how did it go? Right. It's up, down, up, down, up, down. It's one step backward, 2 steps forward. Sometimes it's the reverse. Sometimes it's 2 steps back and 1 step forward. Mm-hmm. And when you're in those dips and valleys, it always feels terrible. Mm-hmm. But when we look over a long period of time and say, okay, where are we now and where were we? Usually it's incredible.
Right.
The progress is made despite, those ups and downs. So
yeah.
And you guys have had some we all have, but I would think particularly in your business, just so our listeners know, your business is you are cleaning facilities such as commercial office buildings, industrial spaces, warehouses, things like that. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
And so we think we're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know if we're at the beginning of a pandemic.
Right.
Hopefully we're towards the end of a pandemic. Right. But things have changed a lot in the world, and we're working from home, or no, we're in the office, but then you got to, clean all the services, and then don't worry about, all that stuff. Yeah. I'm sure that's been a rough and tumble kind of ride and experience for you guys. So how do you deal with all that? How do you cope with all that craziness in the world when you're trying to build this highly stable, highly predictable business with, underscore the standard operating procedures? When the world isn't standard, right. how do the standard operating procedures work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly last year was a wild ride, and it wasn't all bad in the end, but it put us to the test.
Right.
Like everybody, I think. Yeah. I think most businesses, and we count our lucky stars, because you look at restaurants and some other businesses that just couldn't survive.
Right.
And so we're lucky in that regard. I think a lot of people have asked us, well, you guys are in the cleaning business, you must be one of the businesses just like killing it right now. And we're like, well, actually, when the pandemic first hit and everything shut down, we lost 75% plus of our recurring revenues.
Wow.
like that.
Yeah.
And so, we're sitting around like deer in headlights. Okay, what
right.
What do we have to do to survive?
Right.
Are we going to end up having to lay people off? Are we going to end up, how do we get through this? And who knows where it goes? But I got to credit my partner, Dave. We all did come together as a team, but Dave really spearheaded the effort to get ahead of all the disinfectant misting and disinfectant, services that we could lean into, because obviously our phones were ringing for that immediately.
Right.
And then we shifted our marketing perspective too, and said, look, the people are looking for disinfectant cleaning right now. They're not looking for recurring janitorial. They really are not concerned about pressure washing and glass cleaning. People need to feel safe when they go into their buildings. And so, we changed up our website. We changed up our marketing message. Now, granted, we know that the long-term relationship is still our bread and butter, that commercial janitorial. Mm-hmm. So we were able, in just a couple of months after losing all that recurring revenue, to replace it pretty quickly with disinfectants. But it was a lot of one-offs, a lot of kind of onesie-twosie stuff, but we had all these new relationships that we wouldn't have had before.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so, our goal, at least on the sales side in particular, was let's capitalize on this. We don't want to, get rich off the pandemic. We want to provide a reasonably priced service and an effective service and be a resource. But, we want the relationship for the long term. And so we made sure that everybody that reached out to us knew that, we're here for you. This is, we understand what you need right away. We would love to build this relationship, and so we've picked up a lot of recurring business through.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. Some of our competition, we would come in 75-80% lower than what some of our competition was charging.
Wow.
And if we didn't have any sort of reputation, if they didn't know who we were, they're like, these guys don't know what they're doing.
Like you're almost too low.
How could you be that low?
Right.
And you'd have to really, know what you're talking about and show them actually scientific proof and say, look, these guys, without saying it, being like, these guys are ripping you off.
Right.
Right. And our end goal is like what Stephen was saying, is to be able to develop that long-term relationship, turn it into the janitorial contract or, whatever it is that they're looking for.
I think that's great. And I think it's super smart, your approach. So much patience is required as entrepreneurs and business leaders, right? And I'll give you an experience. So I remember the Great Recession. I bet you not everyone on your team remembers the Great Recession. Not everyone on my team remembers the Great Recession, but I do.
Yeah.
And my recollection of that is, it was really bad in a lot of ways, right? There were a lot of our customers that were suffering. Some of them closed their doors never to return. But kind of like what you were saying, there were opportunities to leverage up and level up into other organizations that previously wouldn't even, take our phone call. Well, suddenly, we've got to figure out a way to lower IT costs, and we've got to figure out a way to get through and survive this. And so now they're open to outsourcing certain functions that they weren't previously willing to do. And so overall, it worked out really well. And we still have some of those clients that we built relationships with when things were tough, and they'll remember that. So I applaud you for having the vision to do that.
That's cool.
Something you mentioned that I think is really important, and we've talked about on this show before with some of our other guests, but I think every entrepreneur needs to know this. And you mentioned staying true to your values. And so tell me about that. What's the work of understanding what your values are? And do you also maintain a purpose and a mission? Is that part of the deal? Does it get talked about within your team? I'm just curious how that part of the business works. Did it exist? Did you create it and then Dave came along, or did you guys do that later?
It's a work in progress.
It's a continual work in progress.
Right. And that's one of our values, actually, is to remain dynamic and always striving for improvement.
Love it.
But there were core values. We've worked on them continuously. But when I got there were. And there's a little bit of humor to it, which leads to one of our core values is enjoy what you do every day.
Yeah, love it.
And that's really one of the most important in my eyes. We're in the cleaning industry, and it's not a sexy job. And so how do you attract new talent? How do you get people to come in? And obviously, in the labor crunch now that we're dealing with, it's even more pronounced.
Right.
And providing the culture that we take care of our people, and that we really truly care about their well-being, and we want them to enjoy what they do. It plays a big part in retention and hiring, and being successful just in general. So, that's just one value in particular that we just really, really, really hang on to.
That's fantastic. Now, is that something that's kind of stays in the C-suite, or is it do your team members know about your values and what they are?
They do.
That's great.
They do. We work on it. I think we do a better job of keeping it within our management team, but we stress it, in our operational meetings. I want every single person to understand that's our goal.
Right.
Ultimately, I sit through classes and they say, what's your purpose? Why do you have a cleaning company? I was like, and really what it boils down to is, we want people to come in and work for level 7 and be better for doing it.
Right.
And whether hopefully it's more than collecting a paycheck, hopefully we're given an opportunity to grow, But if it is just collecting a paycheck, at least we're providing that service. But
Right.
our goal is for everybody that comes through our doors to be a better person for some way,
Yeah,
and
that's
doing
great.
so.
We really also encourage an ownership culture. We don't expect for people to come in and hear us say, this is the way it is, it's the way it's going to be, and these are the rules you're going to play by, period. We expect for everybody to provide input, particularly those who are doing the work where the rubber hits the road, because that's where you're going to get the best ideas. So we always encourage feedback. If somebody comes to us, as we're onboarding people, and we try to constantly remind them, look, if there's a better way of doing this, let's talk about it.
Right.
We want to hear about it, because that is one of my favorite goals, is that we are constantly striving for improvement. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that remaining pliable is important.
We have a lot in common. So one of our values is find a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of our values is have a blast. We like to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last value, have a blast, because you got to do the other ones to have permission to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it is on there because I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So, Dave, you mentioned that you don't often get into an argument, but I've been running as the sole shareholder of Rocket IT, and so that has its pluses and its minuses. For a very long time, it was me doing all the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't another partner to help take some of the load off. Now I've got a great leadership team, and maybe it's not so bad anymore, but back in the day, that was a big thing. So how do you resolve disputes? What happens when you've got two people that might have a difference of opinion on how to get things done? Do you just arm wrestle, or how does that work?
I think we do a good job checking egos at the door.
Okay, good.
I think that Dave and I both are able to listen to not only each other, but those around us. And if we're in a meeting and I look at it this way and I say, hey guys, I really feel pretty strongly that this is the direction we need to go. And let's set things up like XYZ. And then Dave or Skalk or Margot chimes in and says, no, you're not thinking about this right. You're not thinking about this clearly. I got no problem. And then I would say that about everybody around the table, stepping back and saying, if your idea is better than mine, I don't need to own it. I don't have to be the guy that came up with the right idea. I just want the right idea. And
is that right, Dave?
Absolutely, it really is.
Okay, good.
It really is.
All right.
Well,
Trust but verify. I just want to make sure what you're saying.
And I think I really am speaking for everybody at our senior management, and on our team there. But particularly, I think it starts with me and Dave.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Stephen and I, we hire people that are way smarter
right,
than us
that's
anyways.
the idea.
Good idea.
And we recognize that we're not the smartest guys in the room.
Right.
And we're humble enough to say, you know what, your idea might be better than mine. And we, like you said, we check our egos out the door. It really hasn't been an issue.
That's
we may have had a couple of disagreements, but nothing that we can't just talk about and get through.
Right. It sounds like you're very, very intentional about the way that you're building the business and the way that you're focused on operations. Not everyone is. A lot of folks are, look, this is a job and I got to get in here and get it done, and it's insanity all day long, and then I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and repeat. Where does that come from? Is that something you just sort of learned over time, or is there maybe a process? Like a lot of people are doing like EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, things like that. Is there something that you're using as a structure, or is this more organic and sort of figured it out along the way?
I think it is organic, and I think it's one of the reasons that Dave and I clicked early on is that we both believe in process, and we both believe in systems, and you have to, the old adage, you can't steer the ship if you're down below bailing out water. And there are some stretches where, honestly, this past few weeks feels like for me that I just have no choice. Like I'm drinking from a fire hose every day.
Wow.
But to your point, you got these peaks and valleys and the growing pains. You got to take advantage of the times that are kind of smooth sailing. Right. And let's always watch what we're doing strategically. Let's always look at, how we could be doing this better. But that's a mindset that Dave brought in immediately too. And I think we just sort of clicked there.
Where does that come from, Dave?
Well, so in the landscaping business, we got to a point where like we had a great core group of guys, and I had them, so trained and working so efficiently that whenever we'd bring somebody in from the outside, my guys would literally run. I mean, we would do 40. I'd have a group of 4 guys that would do 40 to 50 yards in a day.
Oh, wow.
And
Are you serious?
Yeah. People would come in and they'd be like, how many are we doing? And I mean, my guys, it got to the point where the first person out of the truck was the edger. Second person was starting the machine. If I saw somebody weed eating, I'm like, no. So, I mean, we got it down, and I knew that we had to finish a yard in 7.5 minutes, and, people were paying $300 something bucks a month. And anyways, it made it really, really, really difficult to hire people because my guys were running so much, in order to get it done out of necessity and just out of loyalty, to us, that they didn't want to quit even though they were working like crazy.
Wow.
And so for me, it really helped me learn, I want to stay ahead of that labor curve. There's a good balance. You don't want to get too far ahead where you're not making, a profit. But the flip side is you don't want to be so far behind. We couldn't hire anybody.
Right.
We couldn't get people to come in. We couldn't grow. Both my boss and I, we were working so many hours that, I was finally so burnt out, and I realized he didn't want to grow because we couldn't hire people.
Right.
And so I just kind of plateaued, and I continued to work just ridiculous hours. And I was like, I can't continue to do this. And so I've really always had that mindset of, look, we can't be killing our guys. Mm-hmm. We've got to be kind of ahead of the curve, be able to plan, and yet still be able to be profitable at the same time.
Sure.
So it's always been very, a forefront of like the way I think.
Right.
And it's from being in the middle of it. So.
Well, it sounds like that experience has served you well.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember, was it E-Myth,
mm-hmm.
where they were talking about working in the business versus working on the business?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's so important for leaders of a business to be able to step away from, okay, I've just got to grind here and get, there are days in weeks sometimes where we have to do that. But the mindset, if we can get to the point where we're focusing our energy and attention on working on the business, long term, that's going to be way better every time. And it sounds like you guys have done a really great job with that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We try.
So tell us about what's happening right now in the field. We're, like I said, we're in the throes of this pandemic. We've got the Delta variant is threatening the possibility that we have to go back to everybody working from home and things like that. What are you seeing out there in the field with what businesses are doing to cope with these rapidly changing conditions?
Well,
go ahead, Dave.
This is a hard one. You take it, Dave.
That's right.
Some of the Class A businesses, they've kind of left it up to their employees whether they want to bring it back in. I think moving forward, we're always going to have some sort of hybrid working space.
Right.
But what we found is from a cleaning perspective and contracts and getting new contracts, that a lot of people are very hesitant to go ahead and bid out their janitorial because they don't know what the future holds.
Mm-hmm.
They might be running at a 40% capacity where they're, before pre-pandemic, they're at 100% or 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So they're real hesitant to kind of change the scope of the cleaning. And so we've run into that. But, in terms of the Delta variant, I think people are honestly just so done with it.
Right.
They're ready to just get past it. They don't want to believe this is happening again.
Right.
I'm going to go to this 80,000 sold out event at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, no matter what. I'm good. I've been vaccinated. And I don't know. It's even what.
Yeah, that's right. I would say the same thing. I mean, certainly when it really hit the fan last year, everybody. I mean, I for one was like disinfecting my groceries before I brought them.
Right.
Out. Like everybody is just like, I don't know what to do.
A lot of us were, yeah.
And there's not a lot of data to work with, and there's all kinds of, speculation, and now we know a little bit more. And I think that things don't have that same sense of urgency that they did last year.
Right.
Even though if you look at the numbers, it's pretty scary what's going on right now.
Sure.
I do think the vaccinations definitely give people some peace of mind. But we have seen an uptick in a lot of the disinfectant services. It's nothing like it was last year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Well, I guess only time will tell, right?
That's right.
So tell us a little bit more. I want to go back to the culture thing just a little bit, and your team. You'd mentioned, you sort of alluded to kind of high turnover, and I saw a statistic multiple places recently saying 40%. 40% turnover is what's sort of predicted nationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you work with bringing new team members in and getting them up to speed on what the culture is in your organization so that they understand what's happening? What's the process for that?
Part of our onboarding process is, for one, going through our values.
So right up front.
This is what's important to us.
This is who we are, right?
This is who we are. And we work very independently. We work well together. You have to be self-motivating. And we make it very clear on the front end what we're looking for when we're trying to hire somebody. And, we've made plenty of mistakes. We brought people in who didn't fit on the bus, and being able to recognize that and recognize that somebody doesn't fit and doing something about it, allows the rest of your team to say, okay, we're not going to put up with mediocrity. We're not going to let you try to pick up for this person because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, but I think, just to go back to what you're saying, just a good onboarding process. And part of that, we always like to celebrate people, especially when we bring them onto our management team. We bring everybody out. We celebrate the first day that they're there, and we'll just we'll have them bring their family and just.
Really? Wow. Great.
And really just try to make them feel home.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I heard some sort of stat saying people start the first day of work, and they get sent, some papers, they get sent and put in their office, and then they fill out their paperwork. And then after that, they're, 40% of the people, I think is what it was, want to quit after the first day or start looking for another job. Yeah. And so we try to combat that by being the complete opposite, by really trying to celebrate them, be as helpful as we can, bring them on board, and try and show them what their job's going to look like, and be very clear with what our expectations are.
Yeah, I love that. Something we talk about here at Rocket IT every once in a while, and it sounds like you guys are focused on this also, is curating experiences for the people that we interact with. So you've obviously spent a lot of time on that with your customers of, hey, when we meet a prospect for the first time, here's the experience that I want them to have. Same thing with a new employee. This is the experience I want them to have, so that when they walk away, they can say, wow, that was pretty awesome. And the reality is it was all planned, right? You had a structure in place and a system in place for that. And it sounds like you're doing a great job of that. That does make me think about, so the reason you guys got on my radar in the first place is Stephen and I met at our local Chamber of Commerce, and you were on the board there, which is impressive because a lot of leaders really need to be in the community for a very long time before they're invited to participate at a board level in some of their most important community organizations. And here you were, 5, 6, 7 years in and on the board of our Chamber of Commerce. So obviously community is an important part of what you guys do. Can you tell me about is there a strategy behind that of, is it all about, more business for level 7, or it doesn't seem like that? It seems like there's more to it than that. I'd like to kind of hear about what your approach is and your thinking on this topic.
Yeah, I think Dave hit on it earlier a little. We want to make what we do meaningful. I mean, not only to us, but to everybody on our team. And it's what we ultimately sell as a commodity. I mean, granted, we like to think of ourselves as the gold standard in our industry.
Sure.
And I think we could certainly lay a legitimate claim to that. but at least in our market. But cleaning a building is it is unsexy, and it's easy to look at it like, well, somebody wants a job and they need a paycheck, and so we're going to give them this task to do, and then we're going to pay them, and that's the exchange. When you think about, well, I want to look back on my career like I did something meaningful. How did we take advantage of our presence in a community to actually bring about some change in a positive way in the communities in which we do business? And that is in our mission statement.
Love it.
Yeah. So, immediately we're thinking about ways to do that, and we volunteer time doing things like planting trees with City of Shamil, which is
nice.
So, and we've organized our own civic cleanup events and being a cleaning company. So
perfect.
But the chamber is a great way to do that, obviously.
Sure.
I mean, there are industry groups that help you get plugged into, like IFMA and BOMA in our world, where vendors and property managers can kind of coexist, and there are a lot of charity opportunities to work through those as well. But really getting involved in the Shamil Chamber early on, which is a much smaller chamber, but a terrific.
Is that where you're headquartered, Shamil?
Our office is actually in Doraville right now.
Okay, so you're close, right in that community. Those two are, for our listeners that might not be from here, are right next to each other.
Yep, that's right. And then, but we are actually, hopefully, if everything goes through with our building we have under contract, we'll be Guanetians here.
This is news.
In a couple of months. Yeah,
that's great.
So
I knew you were looking. I don't think I'd heard the update that.
Yeah,
I've got one figured out.
So. Yep, we hope to be closing in maybe 30 or 40 days if all goes well.
Wow,
yeah.
That's exciting.
So we'll be on Medlock Bridge in Peachtree Corners. So
great neighborhood, great place to be.
But we'd always heard great things about the Gwinnett Chamber, and obviously it's a big organization, and Gwinnett is such a terrific business community, and we did a lot of business in Gwinnett. We had a lot of relationships there, and we're of course right on the kind of the border of DeKalb and Gwinnett anyway. So. We've been involved with the Shamil Chamber, which we really enjoyed, and we met a ton of great people, and it does. I mean, it gives you a sense of meaning for
sure
in what you're doing.
Absolutely,
to be plugged into the community. But we kind of dragged our feet on the Gwinnett Chamber. I don't know why. If I could go back in time, we would have done it earlier. But
really,
it was probably 2017 or 18. We first sat down with Vince But once we got plugged in there, we sort of were like blown away by what type of organization it is, and we just said, look, let's go full tilt. Let's get in the Chairman's Club. Let's really run with this, because this organization is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and it's been
we do have, no kidding, we have one of the finest chambers of commerce in the country right here in our community, and absolutely makes sense to belong to it and take part.
Yeah.
Well, I like I said, I've admired you a lot in the way that you've approached the community and your involvement in the community. I think it's just awesome. And I think, yes, it's a great way to build our businesses. I've certainly built my business at our local chamber. But it's also just a great way to build really meaningful relationships and to get back to a community that's so important to us. So nice job.
Yeah, we can throw in there that we partner with the Rainbow Village.
That's true.
Hey, we love the Rainbow Village. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Well, this building, hey, that's big news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're a little over a month out from closing.
We hope so.
Yeah.
October 4th.
We've still got some boxes to check, but we're on the right track.
Yeah, I would imagine we bought our building in 2017, and there are lots of boxes to check, right? There's a lot of work to be done, not only to find the building, make sure it's the right one, but then to make sure our ducks in a row for financing and how we're going to pay for it and all that stuff. At least you're able to show rock solid stability
right.
for the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So that's good. No, I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see that.
We'll host you there for
Yeah. You'll have to have a big open house event or something like that.
That would be nice.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I do have a couple questions for you. All right. So tell me, what does a client look like for you? I know we touched on it earlier, and honestly, I'm making some wild assumptions based on what I've seen on your website and our discussions in the past. And for me, I sort of understand it to be commercial office space and industrial warehouse type locations. How do you define what that perfect customer looks like, and what are sort of the parameters of what a win looks like when you meet somebody?
That's a great question and a timely question for us. We've actually just been through this exercise very recently with a consultant who we think very highly of, and it's been very helpful to us.
Oh, nice.
And it is. It's when you sit back and think, what is our core customer?
Right.
Who is that person? Who is that company?
Mm-hmm.
Because we do serve a wide array of property verticals, and to your point, of course, office buildings need cleaning and industrial facilities, and some retail, in some cases institutional and churches, and so it's a wide range.
That is a wide range, yeah.
And we sort of accidentally got into sports and entertainment facilities, doing work for the contractor that built out Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We came in and pressure washed the entire stadium.
Wow.
From top to bottom.
It's a big stadium.
Yeah, it is a big one, and it was a big job, but it was a golden opportunity for us, and so we still work with Mercedes-Benz Stadium today. We do a lot of work with them. We do post-event cleaning and a number of other services there too. And then from that we got work at State Farm Arena, and now we have work at some of the music venues around town, like Solaris at Lakewood, and
wow.
And so
you have some big name clients under your belt.
Yeah, it's
very recognizable. Yeah,
it looks good on a resume. But, but that being said, not all the biggest feathers in your cap are necessarily your ideal customer. Sometimes you may want a customer because it looks good on a resume.
Right.
But when we look back at when we sit down and we say, okay, who are we really after? Who are we here to serve, and who we can align with best? And obviously, one of the defining factors is someone that pays the bills and their checks don't bounce.
Right.
That's a big one.
On time.
On time. Right.
Let's lead with that. Right.
But also that they have a genuine need for what we do, our core business, and they're looking for a partner. They're not necessarily looking for us to provide warm bodies and instruct what to do.
Right.
They want us to bring our expertise and gives us a chance to come in and write a scope of work for their needs and manage it and find efficiencies. Mm-hmm. And that's where we shine.
Yeah.
We're not ever going to be the cheapest outfit.
Right.
So if somebody's just trying to hire somebody based on cost, we're not going to be a good fit. So, when we think about an ideal client, we want somebody who is looking for, good quality work, but at the same time, knowing that, I don't know how to say this without sounding, it's willing to pay for it, I guess, and realizes our value.
Well, they recognize it as an investment.
Yes.
Right.
It sounds like.
Yeah, and recognize the investment and what we're going to bring to the table. And ultimately what we do is we strive to take the problem of cleaning off of their plates. Mm-hmm. So if the way we look at it is, if we're on your radar, we're doing something wrong.
Right.
If somebody's noticing that something wasn't cleaned, we're not doing this. We're not doing our job, and our job is to keep the cleaning issue, because everybody's got tons of issues. The last thing they want to be worried about whether or not the place is clean or not. Mm-hmm. So, in that regard, that plays a big part of it. Whether or not they have, they're big enough to where it's scalable. Whether they have one, more than one office building is, plays a part in it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. Well, I do think that's really important to find folks that look at their spend on services as an investment. 100%. Mm-hmm. We want that for our IT service clients, that they're looking at as not just an expense, but an investment in their team and their growth and efficiency. And ultimately, any decent investment should have a return. And, just thinking about this building, I walked up to this building today, and we try to take very good care of our building. But I noticed that on the shady side of the building, there's a little bit of spot there that probably needs to be pressure washed. Mm-hmm. And so my expectation is we get that pressure washed and it gives us a return. As we've got space for lease in this building. And so if somebody walks up to the building, we want it to shine.
Right.
And we're going to expect that we're going to command a higher lease rate than we might if all our shadows, are looking like they're a little tired, right? So,
right.
So yeah, that's good. Well,
appearances mean a lot.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where you land in terms of what your ideal client looks like. I know from experience, when we're new in a business, what we do is what people are willing to pay for. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Can you take care of this?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I can.
Yes.
Can you take care of that? 100%, I'm there.
Yeah.
But then over time, as we begin to build our base and we've got some revenue going, then I think we can start to hone in on where do we really shine.
Right.
And that's not, pardon the pun for you guys, right? Where can we really make a difference, and where are we comfortable? What's the lane where we feel like we can bring the most value to the table? And I think that's a constantly evolving thing. We do it here. We have that discussion regularly about, there are things that we need to trim and focus on, and where are we good at things, and where maybe should we leave the expertise to someone else?
Yeah, and I think it's good to learn how to say no. It's good,
Yeah.
And we have slowly learned how to do that.
Right.
I use the analogy all the time as, what's better, the restaurant that has 3 things on their menu?
Oh,
or the one
yeah.
that has 14 pages of things, because you can't do everything well.
Yeah.
And so you have to really hone in on what you are good at it and focus on.
Right. Yeah, the restaurants that have the spaghetti and the burritos, I usually try to stay away from those. They don't always work out too well. You mentioned something that I want to touch base on really quick. You mentioned that you're working with a professional. I'm not sure what you said, but consultant.
Yeah.
So I heard coach.
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge believer in bringing in mentors and people that have walked the walk before. Can you just touch on that for a couple of minutes? How did you decide to do that, and what's sort of the goal there, and how's that going?
Well, I think Dave also touched on this a little bit earlier. Is we know what we don't know, and we're not afraid to speak up.
All right.
And so
I kind of took that as internal team members, but you're bringing in experts from outside too.
Absolutely, yeah. And it started with, it's somebody we met through the Shamil Chamber, a friend of ours who is also a working partner in some capacity, and he introduced us to this guy who's involved with Vistage. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yeah, Vistage, yep.
So Dave has been plugged in with a Vistage group for now, 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
I think I'm going on 3.
Yeah.
So you're really doing a lot to sharpen the saw, bringing a business coach, participating in Vistage, which is I think most of our listeners are probably familiar, but basically a CEO,
peer group,
entrepreneur peer group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we really like the CEO of Dave's Vistage Group. I think that's what they call him, right? Yeah, but
the chair.
The chair.
Yeah, the chair. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mark Borelli is the guy's name, and he's a whiz, and he's been super helpful to us, and then we're kind of up to our eyeballs in consultants right now, but as we grow, and I think it is part of it. It's I don't have a sales background, but I oversee a sales department,
right?
And I know how to do what I've learned how to do by doing, but I know that there are better processes and better ways to do it, especially as we grow. And so as we're setting ourselves up to scale, we want to make sure we build these things right.
Yeah, I love it.
So, yeah.
Well, actually, so let's jump in on that really quick. You said setting ourselves up to scale. We talked earlier about kind of the plan from the bottom left to the top right. If you kind of look out 10 years, Stephen, what does your organization look like? What's the goal there, or the vision for your company?
Well, we look ahead to technology and become an increasing role. Yeah, it's we don't want to be, but yeah, exactly right. We're going to be calling you, man.
Yeah,
that's how that's going to work.
I was hoping that would lead to
absolutely. The software changes all the time, and some of the hardware changes all the time. And
sure,
robotics is not quite where it's going to be, but it'll get there soon.
Yeah,
they're
interesting.
There's some autonomous floor scrubbers and vacuum cleaners right
Interesting.
now. That are out.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Very cool.
And, for instance, certainly that kind of thing, there's geo-tracking, and you can kind of program robots to do the vacuuming. It's got to be the right space.
Right.
It's going to take some time for
probably an open floor space kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. They're not opening that door.
Right.
Right. But one that I thought we came across, I thought was very interesting. Right now we do a good bit of glass cleaning services on the exterior of buildings.
Oh.
Now we don't self-employ the rope screws. We sub that work out.
Right. Sure.
Reliable partners. Mm-hmm. But my guess is 10, maybe 15, who knows how long, in some number of years from now in the near future, you won't see too many swing stages on the side of buildings and guys hanging from ropes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
There's already some technology in the works there. Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's interesting. And of course, we don't want to be behind the 8 ball there. So we're constantly thinking of ways. And most directly right now for us, that really means good operating software.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're implementing a software program right now that we've customized for our business model, and it helps a lot. And
wow.
Yeah. So,
well, who knew? I mean, honestly, you go from really what I think has arguably been a history of manual labor in this industry to now we have to be technologists and visionaries and thinking about things like software applications and robotics and drones. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, that English and economics degree. No, that is awesome, guys. Well, thanks for sharing that. So let's do what we call our lightning round. These are the same 3 questions we ask all of our guests. We can jump in with each of you or just one of you, just depends on how things go. But one thing that I love to sort of understand is usually most of us have somebody in our path that we've run across that really made a profound impact in our lives. Can you guys each tell us about who that was for you?
I can go first. I talked about him a little earlier. It was my old boss. It was Andy Batchelor.
Oh, nice.
I learned a lot of what I should do and shouldn't do from him, but he always treated me as like I was his partner rather than his employee. And he showed me how to treat people. Like he always treated people very well. But like I was saying earlier, I learned how to hire ahead of the path because I didn't want to fall in the same rut.
I love that.
But he really was instrumental in he'd have consultants. He'd always have me in the financial meetings. I always had the P&L,
Really? Wow. He really put a lot of faith and confidence in you. That's incredible.
Absolutely. And so I learned a lot from him. And I don't know that I've even called him to thank him at this point, but
hopefully he's listening.
Yeah, I hope so.
You might want to call him though.
I'll share this with him. He'll be appreciative. But I'm very appreciative of the time and and outside of that, it's my dad. But yeah,
fantastic. How about you, Stephen?
Yeah, I was also going to say my dad first. I've certainly worked with and worked under and learned from a lot of different people that I've admired, but my dad taught my brother and sister and me early on to always do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, right.
And if you're going to take the time to do anything at all, do it right.
Man, I'll tell you what, that all by itself, just to do what you said you're going to do, sets you apart from 80% of your competition in any business. Not just cleaning business, but great lesson.
Yeah, I think so. And it's always been kind of stuck in my wiring and my siblings' wiring too, and I think it's served us well.
That's awesome. So, what's the single most important lesson you've learned? And let's kind of keep it to this career, the cleaning crew. Is there anything particular you guys have learned that's been super important?
Keep the right people on the bus.
Oh yeah, that's important.
People that don't fit, the longer they're on the bus, the more of a cancer it is to everybody. And the quicker you can figure out who the right people are, the faster you can get pointed in the right direction.
It's tough to do.
It's very
tough.
Yeah. It's a very tough thing.
Yeah. Nobody wants to fire someone. But at the same time, you do run into the situations where, you know what? Sometimes the best thing, not only for us, but also for the person that's leaving, you'll find a better bus, right? You'll find something that's better suited for you.
Absolutely. That's true. And I would say, once you find those people that are the right people, absolutely empower them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And bring people on who are going to do better than either Dave or I or anybody in our senior management team could do. Like, we expect when we hire someone that we are hiring.
We're going to raise the bar a
That's
little bit, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the expectation.
Yeah, I like that. I like that approach. So tell me, how do you guys learn? Are you book people? Are you podcast people? YouTube people?
So I can't read. So I'm a book on tape guy.
Nice.
One of the recent books that I listened to was Emotional Intelligence by Srizad Shamil. I think I'm probably butchering his name.
Right.
But
I've heard of that before. Yeah.
It teaches you have both two sides of the brain, and one's the survival side of the brain, and the other's the sage side of the brain. And so as you grow up as a baby, you learn the survival tactics, which as you grow can actually turn out to be harmful. They can be why you're successful and also go overboard on the other side. And it's being able to recognize what they call them saboteurs, specifically what your saboteurs are and how to recognize them and get through them and think in more of a positive state of mind, which is really, it's been awesome for me. It's been a great book.
Very cool. I know you're joking when you say you can't read, but I am the same way. Especially as I've gotten older, it's harder for me to sit down and have the patience to get through something longer. And so I often have to listen if I'm going to get through it.
I'll
fall asleep.
I'm in the car all the time. So it's easy to hit play either on a podcast or, a book on tape or something to that effect. Yeah.
Chris and Jessica are in the room here. Tapes were these things that we used back in the olden days to play back audio.
I did say book on tape, didn't I? An audio book. I apologize.
How about you, Stephen?
Oh man, I love to read, but I always read at night right before bedtime. And if I make it 15 minutes, I'm lucky because I just I crash. But so I'm a very slow reader for that reason. I might carve out a little bit of time on a weekend. Right now, and I also always have like 4 or 5 books going at the same time. I'm just so ADD. I don't. But sometimes I'm in the mood for fiction, and sometimes I'm in the mood for something completely different. But yeah, I've got fly my dork flag a little bit, but I'm reading Marcus Aurelius Meditations right now. And
wow.
Yeah. I like philosophy
You're
stuff.
A cerebral guy.
Well, sometimes. Sometimes much less so.
Right.
I try to pretend.
Right.
But I do think it's important to read fiction too. I really enjoy it, and I think there's a lot to be gained from that. I think it kind of, I don't know, it teaches you empathy or something to get in the mind of people who are not you.
Yeah, right.
and so I like.
They're valuable
fiction.
too.
Yeah, they are indeed. But so I like all sorts of different fiction. But I'm reading a Ken Follett book right now called Fall of Giants.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm definitely a podcast guy. I like, and if I'm working out or working in the yard or driving, I like the Tim Ferriss podcast. I like a little bit more mindless entertainment. Dak Shepard, I think, does a really good job. Yeah,
he does have a great show, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's entertaining. He's got good guests.
He has some pretty deep questions too. Like he goes. He'll easily wander into the woods with you and really pull out some stuff that you probably wouldn't normally hear on a podcast.
That's right. And I like Philosophize This is one. So again, well, anyway, I like, and there's another one that I've recently been turned on to called The Knowledge Project by Shane Parish.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he's a real smart guy and asks really good questions and has good guests also.
I would call you a prolific podcaster then.
I think that's fair to say these days. I'm definitely deep into some podcasting.
Yeah, man, with all the coaches and everything else, your brain must be growing at an amazing rate.
I don't know. Maybe deflecting
That's
most
fantastic.
of it.
So for our listeners that are interested in reaching out to either of you guys or Level 7, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I would say just go to our website. It's the easiest thing to do. L7fs.com.
Wow, you guys are maybe one of the shortest domain names I've heard in a while.
I'm pretty proud of it.
Right.
Letter L, number 7, FS as in facilityservices.com. And yeah, it's easy to contact us from there.
Okay, so. Awesome. You've been terrific guests. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Good job, y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
On that note, it's time to wrap things up. Stephen and Dave, from myself and our audience, thank you for joining me today. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope that this episode provided you with some new ideas to help grow your business.